open up for you. So if you just come down to the 2. So it's your lucky day. May I then ask you to stand up whilst the minister is coming? We are ready to start. So if you could just show respect to the minister and please stand up. Thanks, everyone. I think if you do want to meditate or pray, we will allow just half a minute today for that. Otherwise, the minister, he says we can sit down. Okay. Please take your seats, and hopefully all the others who were unable to find their seat is sorted now. If you want to bring them in, please do so. You go back immediately after the forum. For those who come from abroad, I must get someone else to do the welcoming because he would like you to stay a little longer. So it is my pleasure then to invite the CEO of the South Africa's Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, Dr. Dlamini, to welcome us to the campus. The CSIR, with which our department has worked with the science and technology community to establish the Science Diplomacy Capital for the Africa platform. So we are forever grateful to you, Dr. Dlamini, for your willingness and give this venue to us for 3 days now. Over to you.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the CSIR International Convention Center. My name is Morgan Mahlangu. Sanitizing stations are located in the foyer and all around the building. In the unlikely event of an emergency, an alarm will sound throughout the building. Trained responders will give instructions on evacuation. Stay calm, take only belongings that you can carry. Emergency procedure, walk in an orderly manner, do not run. Responders will lead us to an emergency exit, then to the assembly point. Please observe 1 meter from other delegates and staff. General information, restrooms are available throughout the building. Please look out for signages. As this is a public building, please do not leave your valuables unattended. Wi-Fi information, free wireless internet access is available throughout the building. Select free CSIR ICC on your device and no password is required. I thank you. Enjoy your time at the CSIR Convention Center.
Thank you very much, Morgan, for making sure that we are safe. Thank you, Dr. Mjwara, for the kind introduction. Honorable Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Dr. Blade Nzimande, the leadership of the departments of higher education, as well as science and innovation led by Dr. Sishi and Dr. Mjwara, respectively, representatives of the diplomatic corps, leaders from industry, leaders of public research institutions and academia, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome. I suppose I can stop here because I've welcomed you. But I will not. It is with immense pleasure and excitement that we extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you to the Science Forum South Africa 2023. This gathering is a celebration of innovation, collaboration, and the boundless possibilities that arise when brilliant minds converge in the pursuit of a common goal of using science, technology, and innovation as a force for good to create impact on humanity. The forum serves as a dynamic platform for sharing knowledge, fostering partnerships, and inspiring the next wave of groundbreaking discoveries. This year's theme, igniting conversations about science, people, partnerships, priorities for the Decadal Plan, invites us to explore new frontiers, challenge existing paradigms, and collectively push the boundaries of human understanding. This year's installment of the Science Forum South Africa is taking place at a time which is very interesting in human history. More than ever before, we live in a world that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. When the world is still waking up from the devastating effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, where we saw more than 770 million people infected by this virus and over 7 million people who died, we are now faced with two wars in Eastern Europe and the Middle East, both with potentially very dire consequences for global peace and economic stability. Now, one of the key lessons that we have learned from the pandemic is the need for preparedness and coordinated regional and global response. Indeed, science saved the day during the pandemic. The international scientific community worked closely together to ensure that not only does science deliver solutions to address the pandemic, but that science was also used to inform critical decisions that had to be made at the time. This gathering of a diverse community of scientists, researchers, policymakers, and industry leaders brings together a wealth of perspectives and expertise. It is through this diversity that we can address the complex challenges facing our society and pave the way forward for a future marked by progress and sustainability. We must seize this opportunity presented by the capacity that has gathered here to rigorously engage in dialogue on some of the most pressing questions facing our continent and the world, including, for instance, how do we utilize the capacity that we have as a continent, or even as a region, to develop solutions that address African problems in health, water and sanitation, education, infrastructure, logistics, energy security, defense, and so forth. How can we ensure that there is better cooperation and collaboration between African research institutions and academia, between the public and the private sector? And how can we take advantage of the wave of technological change that is sweeping throughout the world to leapfrog our development? One of the major technological advancements of 2022 is indeed generative artificial intelligence. We have seen in a very short space of time significant progress in the application of this technology. The integration of artificial intelligence into our daily lives holds promise, whilst at the same time it presents risks that we have to manage. We therefore need to be intentional about our posture with regards to the use of AI. Otherwise, we risk again the risk of being left behind. How can we ensure that we underpin our industrial and economic development with innovation? A topic that is very close to our hearts here at the CSIR. Ladies and gentlemen, as we gather here at the CSIR International Convention Center, which also hosts the DSI Science Diplomacy Capital, let us not only celebrate the achievements of the past, but also look forward to exciting possibilities that lie ahead. Together, let us ignite the flames of discovery and innovation that will shape the future of science in Africa and beyond. In closing, I would like to congratulate the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, and in particular, the Department of Science and Innovation, for what is promising to be a very engaging science forum. To all our guests, thank you for joining us on this journey, and may the 2023 Science Forum South Africa be a source of inspiration, knowledge, and lasting connections. Welcome, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Dlamini. I see now why the minister banned me from doing the welcome. You've done such a wonderful job. I don't think anyone is going to leave South Africa over the weekend. But thank you very much, and we look forward to continued cooperation with yourself as the CSIR and the success of our science diplomacy platform, where we promote partnership between our national system of innovation and Africa's largest diplomatic community. So, dear Science Forum participants, it is now my immense honor to invite Minister Nzimande to deliver his keynote address. Minister, we truly value your support and leadership, and now looking forward to listening to you. Round of applause for the Minister.
Thank you very much, DG, Dr. Philim Jwaha. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and all of you as participants in the Science Forum South Africa 2023. In South Africa, we have a popular expression often used at the start of an address to say that all protocol observed. When I was Minister of Transport, I would add and said also all potholes closed. Although I'll be challenged afterwards when people go through potholes after all. In using this expression of all protocol observed, by the way, the objective is to acknowledge everyone, as I'm doing today, including those who may feel offended if they are not individually recognized by the speaker. This afternoon, I want to say all protocols are observed, but for a slightly different reason as well. Science Forum South Africa is an event where all is welcome, and the contributions of all are encouraged and appreciated, as the debate on the role science should play in society is indeed a debate in which everyone should participate. When I therefore say all protocol are observed, it is an affirmation that you are all welcome and that your contributions are not only invited, but strongly encouraged. Our forum is not an event for passive consumption of ideas, but for active contributions. Because what we need is for all of you to become militants for science. Well, I may want to break this rule of all protocol observed and recognize one particular person, DG, for a reason I will say, Professor Ibo Mandaza from Zimbabwe. I'm acknowledging Ibo because Ibo introduced me to scientific African thought. When he was running SAPES, that is still running in Zimbabwe, and I learned one thing, that the prosecution of the national liberation struggle in itself was part of a scientific practice as to why We cannot allow a society where people oppress others. So I value you, Ibo. I'm very glad that you are here today. That is why also I want to say today, as we hold this science forum, I think it's important as South Africans, given where we come from, to think of the children of Gaza. For many reasons, but for me, the one main reason, those kids must not die because we want scientists from them. Scientists of the future. It's very important that we say this because we are holding this, unfortunately, in a world that is refusing to put guns down. You know, the African Union has got a resolution of silencing the guns for the African continent. In fact, this should not just be a continental call, it should be a global call that we must silence the guns. Science cannot thrive in the context of conflict, but also science has a role to play, including through its scientific diplomacy, to bring peace to the world. This is the 8th organization of the Science Forum of South Africa, and first, which is a fully fledged in-person event since 2019, after the hybrid events organized during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's good to see all of you again after the COVID pandemic. Indeed, we lost colleagues through COVID, but we will continue to do the work that we have to do, even now also in honor of their own contribution that they made. Of course, in 2022, we also had a pleasant interruption when the Science Forum South Africa made way for South Africa's highly successful hosting of the World Science Forum in Cape Town last December. However, today we are back in the city of Tshwane at the CSIR International Convention Center, close to the heartbeat of South Africa's national system of innovation, gathered with the same objective as before, and that is to ignite conversations about science. Since 2015, we have always had 3 key objectives which informed the organization of the Science Forum. And these remain valid today. Firstly, through the organization of a series of debates on the topical science policy challenges of the day, our goal is to enable shared policy learning for all participants, including by providing a platform for civil society to contribute. Secondly, and notably through the organization of the Science Forum exhibition, which we have this time as well, our aim is to promote the excellence and capabilities of South African science and innovation to international, but also to new domestic partners. The third objective is arguably the most important one, and that is to develop partnerships by rekindling old, cementing current, and exploring new relationships. Science, after all, is both an individual but also a collective exercise. The success of this forum will thus be measured not only by the quality of the debates and the exhibition, but also by the vibrancy of the networking outside the formal program. It is thus my hope that, dare I say, the buzz and the vibe of Science Forum South Africa 2023 will leave you all excited and motivated to work together, to put science at work for our society, and at work for social justice. That's why we've got a simple and nice slogan: making sure it's possible. Science can do that. The theme for 2023 forum is people, priorities, and partnerships for the Decadal Plan. The Decadal Plan is our 10-year plan. In case you are wondering what the Decadal Plan is, let me say you have come to the right place. Because South Africa's Decadal or 10-year plan for science, technology, and innovation, adopted by our cabinet at the end of 2022, I would like to argue is also your plan. It is a plan for all who have the interests of South Africa at heart, and a plan for all inside and outside government who can contribute through science, technology, and innovation to improve the quality of living of all South Africans. The Decadal Plan has a dual focus. In the first instance, its aim is to ensure South Africa's investment in STI, as we call it in short, and also delivers much more fundamental impacts in advancing socio-economic development in South Africa, responding to poverty, inequality, and unemployment. It isn't science if it is not concerned about creating a better life for all. Secondly, and equally importantly, the plan's objective is to look after the well-being of the South African science and innovation system, ensuring it continues to grow as well as being transformed to be more responsive to the needs of South Africa. Our 10-year plan, the Decadal Plan as we call it, its success will depend on partnerships, our ability to work together within government between different government departments and ministries. We also need to work together better within science across the artificial boundaries often imposed by the narrow definition of disciplines. In other words, it isn't science unless it is multidisciplinary. And we also need a compact, reinforced collaboration between government, the private sector, the scientific and academic communities, civil societies, and communities. Also, I think we've got another important challenge in the African continent in particular, the challenge of building capacity for policy development. Usually, a policy is as good as what has been put into it to develop it, let alone what its objective is. And in our continent, we do have a challenge that because support for scientific work still largely depends on donor funding, also often the capacity for policy development is still donor-driven. We are not saying donors must go, but let donors also support an agenda set by Africans themselves. Very important. I'm proud to announce that in order to bring all the partners together for a strategic discussion focused on the implementation of the Decadal Plan, South Africa's President, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, will be convening the first ever presidential plenary meeting on science, technology, and innovation at this very venue next Tuesday, the 12th of December, 2003. This is important. The presidential plenary meeting is a governance mechanism that is introduced by our white paper and the Decadal Plan to bring senior South African leaders and all sectors together for a focused discussion on the role of science in South African society, including the need for increased investment. Our Science Forum, of course, has a similar agenda and can thus be considered as a preparatory conference for the presidential plenary. People, priorities, and partnerships. The theme of the Science Forum is the PPP, which is crucial for the success of our Decadal Plan. I'm thus delighted that with a rich and diverse program with more than 60 individual sessions, Science Forum South Africa 2023 will provide ample opportunity for us to consider how best to harness people, priorities, and partnerships for the implementation of our Decadal Plan. I very much look forward to these discussions, and I would like to assure you that the salient messages emanating from the forum will be reported to the presidential plenary and President Ramaphosa next week. The Decadal Plan's success will, of course, depend on the people tasked with its implementation. In other words, all of us. The various debates organized as part of building human capabilities in science, technology, and innovation, track of the forum accordingly merits our priority attention. And once more, as well as focusing on capacity for policy development. The topics of the forum debate, such as promoting diverse career pathways for doctoral and postdoctoral researchers, or the promotion of human-centric competency development in an age of disruptive technology development, number among those themes which speaks directly to the focus of our 10-year plan, our decadal plan, and indeed the presidential plenary. Our decadal plan, which I again would like to emphasize is also yours, does not identify as priorities specific scientific disciplines or technology platforms. The focus is rather on how we harness science holistically, including the social sciences and humanities, to respond to our key societal challenges. I'm raising this because to some people, science only means natural sciences. You can't divide society. We learned this from COVID, you know, that the vaccine which gets developed through a particular disciplines of science will not work unless people accept that the vaccine works. We were shocked, DG, when we did a survey to show that a significant percentage of South Africans do not believe in vaccines. Only social science could tell us that, by the way. The surveys, no other thing. You are ready? You are ready with your vaccines developed in the laboratory, but you can't use it because some of the people are saying, no, I don't want this thing. So that's just a simple example of the importance of holistically science, natural, humanities, and social sciences. The forum agenda is thus strategically compiled with debates focused on these priorities or challenges, including the interrogation of the future of society as shaped by, for example, the impact of technological disruption on democracy. Other important tracks will debate the role of innovation in shaping the industry of tomorrow and the role of science in enabling sustainable, inclusive development. The Decadal Plan thus requires people to focus on priorities, together working in partnerships, with tracks of the forum program focused on themes such as economic and science diplomacy, as well as the advancement of the Pan-African science agenda. I'm delighted that international cooperation features prominently on the forum agenda. And by the way, science diplomacy needs to contribute in developing multilateralism in the world. We are one global community, but coming from different traditions, histories, and cultures. Those divisions should not be a source of conflict in the world, but should be a source of a vibrant global village with different cultures and histories. Very important. In this regard, I'm convinced that our plenary debate later this afternoon on the role of the African diaspora in the African science and agenda will be a highlight. But it is not only international partnerships which are required, but also a national consensus within South Africa on the importance of science and innovation to our society. Achieving this crucial objective will significantly benefit from the forum's sessions on science communication and science journalism. Another matter that I feel very strongly about. We're doing a lot in science, if I just take South Africa, but we are not communicating that enough. And also, one of the things I'm very passionate about is just basic science literacy. For ordinary communities and families to understand the role played by science in promoting the welfare and the being. That's why it isn't science, unless it also speaks to the needs of ordinary people. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted that the Science Forum South Africa, 2023, have brought you all together with such a rich program, with the purpose and focus for science to make a difference. I would like to thank all who have contributed to the forum's organization, with a special word of thanks to my DG, Dr. Philip Mjwaha, Dr. Thulani Dlamini, the CEO of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, the CSIR, whose teams working together as part of the Science Diplomacy Capital for Africa platform are responsible for the forum's organization. By the way, Dr. Dlamini, I hope one day, when I'm retired from government, but still having enough energy, I would really like to compile a history of science in South Africa. Because, as well as the history of science in the continent, because we have a good story and a bad story to tell, by the way. Because we don't know what was happening here at the CSIR in the 1940s, in the 1950s, in the 1960s, in the 1970s. We need to tell that story so that some of the things that were bad that were happening at that time, we make sure they never happen again. That would be the whole purpose of actually doing that. But above all, I would like to thank you all, including our international partners, represented here also by the diplomatic community, which we value your participation, because as the old saying goes, we are in this together. Let me conclude before the DG gets on to me. Unfortunately, DG, the power dynamics doesn't favor you. You can't stop me. You can't stop me as your minister unless your own career will be jeopardized. But out of respect for you, as a good science DG, I'll conclude now. I want to conclude with a quote from our first president of democratic South Africa, our beloved President Nelson Mandela. Words of wisdom, which are often a source of comfort, inspiration, and motivation. By the way, before I quote Madiba, yesterday we commemorated the 10th anniversary of Madiba's passing. He passed away yesterday, 10 years ago. And in his honor, I would like to recall these remarks he made at the 90th birthday celebration of one of his close comrades, South African freedom struggle hero, the late Walter Sisulu. That's what he said at his funeral. And I quote, "What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead," unquote. That is also my wish for Science Forum South Africa 2023. Let its significance not be its mere organization and our participation, but the difference its outcomes and our actions will make in the life of others. I thank you very much, and I wish you a successful forum. Thank you.
Minister Nzimande, on behalf of all of us, thank you for that inspirational address. I do pledge on behalf of all the forum participants that we will work together in partnership, as you've called for, to translate our Decadal Plan into concrete action which delivers a concrete improvement in the quality of life of all South Africans, and the rest of the global community. I know, Minister, as you said, the power dynamics do not allow me to ask you, but the next session will be held by Dr. Thandi Mgwebe. So maybe I can do the same and say she was given an hour and she can do it in 45 minutes. So allow me then to invite on the stage Dr. Thandi Mgwebe, At the moment, she's a Vice Chancellor of the Nelson Mandela University, but I've been told that she's the incoming Group Executive Business Advancement at the National Research Foundation. Congratulations. And she will be the moderator for the panel. Over to you, Dr. Mkrebe.
Thank you very much, DG. I learned from the Minister that all protocol is observed, but I would like to acknowledge you, Minister, and the international guests who are our visitors, also colleagues from the DSI, and colleagues from the system who are here. You are most welcome. Thank you very much for coming to this opening plenary. This is an opening plenary on Africa Union Decade for African Roots and Diaspora, the role of the diaspora in supporting African science and innovation. And I would like to thank the department for making sure that this session happens. Minister, the theme for this engagement that we're going to do now is building bridges, the diaspora in the Africa we want. Diaspora communities play a pivotal role in fostering development, in helping us with strategies for poverty reduction, economic growth, by leveraging their unique positions as dispersed communities or populations with ties to their countries of origin. Their impact is multifaceted and extends across various domains: knowledge transfer, entrepreneurship, cultural bridges, and soft diplomacy. You mentioned part of this, Minister, in your speech. Advocacy and philanthropy, networks and global partnerships, but also as financial contributors to their households. The global recognition of the diaspora, as its significance, in fact, is evident through its acknowledgement in prominent international platforms, like the Global Forum on Migration and Development, the high-level dialogues on financing for development, and the Global Diaspora Summit. It aligns and it bodes well with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. There are many other platforms where this has been recognized, but I would like to mention that the AU Assembly decision of 2021 designated the decade 2021 to 2031 as the decade of African roots and diasporas. So I would like to call upon my panel. I'm truly privileged to facilitate a conversation with a strong, diverse panel who bring incredible experiences and insights as seasoned professionals and science leaders who share a common vision of advancing science in Africa, as you've noted in the bios from the website. And I would like them to join the stage now. The panelists know themselves. I'll introduce them when they're here. I've seen all of them in the room. Minister and colleagues, we hold this science forum today under certain current conditions. You've mentioned those conditions and circumstances, a geopolitical landscape that is changing, the scholars that are at risk around the world, the peace around the world is being disrupted, climate risks including sustainability transition issues, science connections are being threatened that way. Investment in science to build these bridges, or through the bridges, is important. In our own country, a dream of 1.5 GDP investment in R&D is becoming elusive. Business investment is declining. Yet Africa is an attractive continent, young, vibrant, resourceful. I'm going to ask our panelists a few pointed questions to trigger the conversation on building bridges with the diaspora. Before I go to the panel and introduce them, I would like to invite Ms. Tinyiko Tonchongwana. Yesterday, the Southern African Regional, in fact, in the past 2 days, the Southern African Regional Preparatory Conference for the 9th Pan-African Congress was held here at the CSIR, with the ministerial segment of the conference that was held at the Department of International Relations and Cooperation on 4th of December. Tinyuko is going to report back from that session before the panel engagement. Tinyuko, as you come forward, I would like to mention that Tinyuko's interests revolve around exploring the developmental opportunities at the intersections of science diplomacy, innovation, industrialization, and trade. Her dedication to leveraging science for the benefit of Africa underscores her commitment to contributing to the continent's growth and development. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Program Director, for that introduction. Minister Blade Nzimande, Director General Dr. Phil Mjwaha, ambassadors that are here with us today, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The DSI and the Department of International Relations and Cooperation have, over the past 2 days, co-hosted the Southern Africa Regional Consultations in preparation for the 9th Pan-African Congress, which will take place in Lomé, Togo in October 2024. These consultations were held under the auspices, as the program director has mentioned, of the AU Decade for African Roots and Diaspora, which commenced in 2021 under the leadership of the government of Togo. Now, the concept of Pan-Africanism, which I think is a little bit important to unpack just to provide a bit more context for this session, has been around for quite a long time, but it particularly took traction during the 1950s and 60s, when African countries started to push back against colonialism, against apartheid, and also against Western imperialism. And it is also rooted in the idea of Pan-Africanism, which recognizes different ways in which African people and people of African descent and people of African roots choose to express their identity. And I think this is a very important point. And so Minister Blade Nzimande on Monday, during the ministerial session that we had with other ministers from the Southern Africa region, put it quite well when he mentioned that when we think about the African diaspora, we tend to think about it within the context of a mass exodus from the continent, a mass exodus of skills, which we better articulate as the brain drain. But I think that the narrative is starting to shift somewhat, and it's becoming a bit more nuanced. And we are starting to appreciate the great value and the impact that the diaspora and people with African roots, people of African descent, can have in transforming Africa's development trajectory. But at the same time, within these new nuances, when it comes to how we speak about the diaspora, we also need to have very real conversations about what African governments can do to ensure that their best minds do remain on African soil. And so this was part of the deliberations that we were having over the past 2 days. One of the key outcomes or key recommendations was that we need to build up capacity for policy development and policy implementation, as the minister has mentioned, in the continent. Many countries are faced with challenges of a lack of capacity in developing policy, and this is actually stifling their socio-economic development. Many countries have just started developing their STI policies, for instance. Some countries don't even have industrial policies, let alone the regulations or even the legislation that can actually drive up their economic growth. So the key recommendation here was how can we draw on the expertise of the diaspora to address this challenge? And a key example of that was actually during the height of COVID-19, when prominent Africans in the diaspora partnered with African countries and other key international institutions to negotiate for Africa to gain more access to the COVID vaccine and to also create the regimes necessary for vaccine manufacturing to be spearheaded and fast-tracked in Africa. On another note, we also had very strong voices from influential youth during our session, particularly on this matter pertaining to policy development. And the young people were quite strong in saying that policies that are developed in the continent, they need to reflect the youth. The kind of language that is used in policies needs to reflect the challenges that the youth encounter in their lived daily experiences. The kind of language used for policy making and policy implementation needs to bear in mind the aspirations of the youth. The other key recommendation was with regards to the utilization of digitalization and digital transformation, and there was particularly a specific emphasis on artificial intelligence. And what was also noted was just the opportunities, presenting an opportunity for African trade and developing the requisite infrastructure in order to stimulate trade in value-added manufactured goods. At the same time, it was also noted that we need to mitigate the negative impact of artificial intelligence, as we are now seeing with AI, the reemergence of colonial stereotypes and archaic ideas and imagery pertaining to African people, and this is problematic. And as a response, panelists, the recommendations that they were making was that as African governments, we need to make sure that we run and we do not walk on this matter, and that African governments need to invest in research and development, R&D, particularly in artificial intelligence, because if we don't, what it means is that our young people that are highly skilled in this field are going to get poached by countries outside of the continent and outside of the region that have the financial muscle to develop in R&D, particularly in AI. And lastly, there was much agreement over the 2 days on the opportunities that exist for African countries as a result of the African Free Trade Continental Area, the AFCFTA. While trade under the AFCFTA commenced in 2021, implementation has been a bit slow, largely owing to insufficient and inadequate infrastructure development. So in this instance, be it space satellites, large telescopes, labs for developing medicines or vaccines, or infrastructure for cross-border financial flows, convergence from the 2 days was on the need to partner with the diaspora in mobilizing investments and large but also targeted financing projects. And in this instance, there's also a very strong case to be made with partnering with the African diaspora, particularly those that are scientists and tech moguls and innovators in the diaspora, and basically those who are worth billions. And I must say that on a closing note, I certainly had dollar signs in my eyes when I actually heard that from one of the sessions that in 2022, $95 billion was received by African countries in the form of financial remittances from their citizens or their countrymen based outside of the African continent. And so I think in these times where we are seeing a lot of global instability, as the CEO of the CSIR mentioned, this is really a new opportunity for Africa. And what it can also mean is that we might not necessarily always need to rely on development aid, but can actually gain a lot from these financial remittances and possibly even direct them towards special projects that really address the developmental challenges of the continent. Thank you very much for your indulgence.
Thank you very much, Tinyiko, for that passionate report back from the meeting. We will engage with the audience later. Right now, I would like to introduce my panel. I'm going to start it's going to be random. Dr. Heidi Heckman, Director of Future Africa, and we've got, please show yourself. And the second one is Dr. Kevin Govender, Director of the Office of Astronomy for Development. And we've got Dr. Charity Wayua, Director of IBM Research Africa. And we've got Professor Ibo Mandaza, and is the Executive Chairperson, Executive Chairman of the Southern African Political Economy Series Trust. Welcome, Ibo. And Dr. Michael Makanga. Michael is the Executive Director of the Global Health EDC TP3 Joint Undertaking. And lastly but not least, certainly, Professor Sarah Mutswetsa. Sarah is the CEO of the Human Sciences Research Council. I'm going to start with you, Heidi, as I've introduced. You bring a lot of experience. You have served as the founding CEO of the International Science Council in Paris from 2018 to 2022, and as the executive director of its predecessor organizations. You have advised the UN, and still do, and you sit on significant advisory boards for various international scientific activities and initiatives, but you remain connected to UNESCO and the OECD. Given your extensive experience in global science strategy and policy, how do you envision engaging the diaspora to enhance collaborative research efforts, knowledge interchange, sustainable development in the context of Africa's unique challenges and opportunities? Your personal insights will be great. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ngwebi, Thandi, if I may, and congratulations again on your appointment. And I'm grateful to the organizers for this invitation to share a few ideas on a topic of both great significance and promise. So I am going to base my comments on some personal stories, which, as Thandi has indicated, essentially involved a professional journey of 30 years abroad, working in the international science and technology policy landscape, but a time during which, as much as I might be still connected to the UN, UNESCO, and the international scene, during that time I was very fortunate to be able to remain connected with the South African and the broader African scientific landscape, to be able to regularly participate in and learn from regional science, technology, and innovation policy debates, conferences, fora like the Science Forum South Africa, to be able to contribute to the development of regional initiatives, and in my position be able to create pathways or facilitate pathways to ensure that those initiatives and the scientists involved in them were able to have some visibility and voice in the global science and policy arenas. So maybe three very brief illustrative examples on the basis of which I want to then reflect on some of the insights and lessons learned about engaging with the diaspora. So as head of the international relations at the Dutch Academy of Science, I was in a fortunate position to be able to secure support from the Dutch government as well as the European Commission to contribute to what was then the Gates-funded ASADI initiative to build capacity of African academies. And with the support that we were able to raise and that complemented what ASADI was doing, we actually supported the development of the very first strategic plan of what is today a successful network of African science academies. Then when I was executive director of what was then known as ICSU, the International Council for Science, again, I was in the privileged position of being able to negotiate with an international donor aid agency from Sweden, SIDA, about an agreement, a funding agreement. They wanted to support something that the council was doing, and we managed to raise funding for a long-term program, research funding program, focused very specifically on advancing collaborative, Pan-African research, transdisciplinary research on Agenda 2030. So promoting early career researchers in that regard. And then finally, as CEO of the International Science Council, working with the Council's Committee on Data for Science and Technology, it was a great privilege for me to be involved in the initiation and the eventual establishment of the African Open Science Platform, which was actually launched here at the Science Forum, South Africa, a few years ago, before COVID, and is now hosted by the NRF and supported also by the Department of Science and Innovation. So what are some of the practical insights from these kinds of experiences? The first is to say that, of course, I was privileged to be in a position of some influence and working in but perhaps more important, was involved in, would not have been possible without relationships of trust. And those relationships of trust were built by the fact that I did manage, again, not through my own, but I was fortunate enough to be able to maintain, to stay connected, to maintain the networks on the continent, and perhaps more importantly, to stay informed about science in and for Africa. Those relationships of trust were also critically secured by the fact that there was a commitment from myself, but also from colleagues at the international level, to co-design those initiatives and not to impose them from Paris, headquarters, but to just serve as facilitators, to create pathways. So in other words, I was able to use my role as a bridge, as a facilitator, connecting global preoccupations around global science and technology policies and opportunities with an understanding of local needs, interests, perspectives, and leadership. And then another lesson was that I think for the diaspora and this decade, the AU decade going forward, is that actually some of these insights only come retrospectively. That you understand the value of the role once you've left it, and you realize that there was so much more that could have been done. And part of the problem was that I was operating not in a broader strategic framework, such as the one that the AU decade now will provide. I wasn't aware of other people working on these issues, and to be able to use those as sources of potential leverage and new collective action. I was acting alone. And finally, sorry, Thandi, I just wanted to say that one of the things that, in reflecting now on those experiences, working with the Science Diplomacy Capital for Africa, Curtin University in Australia, and the University of Pretoria, we're starting to explore the science diaspora issue from two lenses of well-established research and practice domains, the one being the diaspora diplomacy and science diplomacy, and looking at the nexus of those to see whether we can come up with some innovative new mechanisms.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Heide. Thank you, Heide. What I'm taking out from you, if I were to mention two things, is use the diaspora's influence and create pathways. But we're going to have a discussion shortly. Now I'm going to call upon Kevin. Kevin, you've got extensive experience and you serve as the chair of the National Organizing Committee for an upcoming IAU General Assembly scheduled to be held on the African continent in August 2024. We acknowledge your extensive experience in using astronomy for development and your role in chairing significant international projects. How do you see the potential involvement of the diaspora in advancing not only astronomy-related initiatives, but promoting collaboration across the continent? 5 minutes, please.
Cool, thanks, Thandi. See, I'm keeping my phone here, so I'll make sure it's 5 minutes. So I think first, let's just acknowledge, the obvious. It's about making connections, and how we connect with the diaspora is the important sort of underlying factor. People need to be inspired. We need to build these human connections, and people can be inspired by profit. You know, people from our diaspora want to do business with the African continent. People can be inspired by religion, by philanthropic means, by the spirit of Ubuntu. But how do we build those connections? And it's important to note that it's not just the physical diaspora. It's not just like people who live away from Africa. It's people who have emotionally disconnected from this continent. Because I think this is a problem as well. When we talk about inspiring human connections, we have to talk about those people on the continent who don't have confidence, who don't have pride, who would leave the continent if they could. We need to inspire them. And I think by inspiring ourselves within the continent, we can reach out to the diaspora as well. So where does astronomy fit in on all this? Astronomy is a special field, and maybe everyone else's science says their fields are special. But I think astronomy is pretty cool. You know, firstly, it's one of those sciences where, you know, if I tell physicists, chemists about astronomy, you know, they get excited. If I tell social scientists about astronomy, they get excited. People that have come to Sutherland to experience the night skies, astronomy is something that really brings us together. It's a hard science. It's something where, you know, to figure out what's going on in tiny, you know, spots of light in the sky, we need to build infrastructure. We need to push ourselves intellectually, push ourselves technologically. But still, it's something that connects us culturally. It's something that you know, everyone looks up at the sky. My wife Carolina and I, we've had the privilege of working in this field where we've used astronomy to inspire people around the world, and we've seen, you know, how it changes people. I mean, when you look at the moon, everyone can see the moon. When you look at the moon next time, think about what the moon sees. Think about what you would see if you looked back from the moon and saw this planet, you know. What would country borders mean? What would the difference in skin color mean in that view from the moon? And I think this is the inspiring aspect of astronomy that we can rally. Now, the South African government and several other governments across the continent now have invested in astronomy, and we're seeing the benefits of it. When Meerkat, the Karoo Array telescope, launched its first images, its first science, the world was blown away, at least the astronomy world. They're like, what? This is some of the most cutting-edge research, some of the most challenging science on the planet. We're pushing human understanding of the universe, and we're doing it from Africa. The South African government's investment in Meerkat is an inspiring aspect. We chose something that has a geographic advantage, and we invested in it, and we're showing the world that we can do this. Now, if we can do that, imagine all the other things we can do. Now, with the astronomy then, maybe we can inspire people through the science we do to be proud that we can do things on this continent. Maybe we can invest in all other sciences, in centers of excellence that will bring people to the continent physically. With the infrastructure we invest in, we bring people physically. With the science we put out there, we bring people together emotionally. And so with that, I think all this is culminating in, as you said, the General Assembly next year. And this is an opportunity to showcase everything. But we don't just want people to come to a meeting. It's the first time this is happening on the African continent. It's an opportunity to shout out. And so we've decided to make it open access. Anyone, anywhere in the world can listen to the talks. Maybe these are things we can do in the other sciences as well, because then we can inspire the diaspora of today and the diaspora of tomorrow as well. Thank you.
It's very difficult to stop the passion, but thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kevin. I take the inspiration, and we have to inspire people, and we have to keep them emotionally connected, Minister, to the continent. Thank you very much. Now, I go to Charity. Charity has got exciting stuff to say about the role of the African diaspora in contributing to and benefiting from the transformative work in computing, artificial intelligence, and other technological advancement that she is leading at IBM Research Africa. Charity, your work has resulted in transformative solutions that have positively impacted business, government, and people's lives. Please, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Sorry. So in the next 5 minutes, I'm really just going to focus on 2 elements that I think really contribute to how we get the diaspora to participate more. And I think about it in 2 words. One is, I call it discoverability. I don't know if that's really proper English, but we're going to work with that for today. And then the second one is advocacy. And I want to highlight those 2 words with 2 specific examples that I have been privileged to be a part of. So as she mentioned, I'm leading IBM Research Africa, and I want to just give you an idea of how IBM Research Africa got to be a research lab in the continent 10 years ago. There were 2 Africans working at one of our headquarters of research in New York. They were quite senior. There were research labs everywhere else. If you look at the map of the lab, nothing in the continent. And so based on their understanding of the company's strategy, their passion for the continent, they were able to actually put together a plan where they went to their senior leadership and convinced them about why they needed to be a research lab working on cutting-edge artificial intelligence, quantum, blockchain at that time, etc., why that needed to be situated in the continent. And because of that, 10 years later, we can now celebrate that we've had a research lab here in South Africa, a second one in Nairobi, in Kenya, where we have tens of PhDs, software engineers, everything you can think about, doing most cutting-edge research that's impacting the continent and also impacting a multinational like IBM. It only took 2 senior people, really passionate about having something here in the continent, but also with a clear understanding of how they would align their interests in developing the continent with what their organization's interest is. And the question I want to leave in our minds is, how do we get hundreds more of people like that? Because we know we have a really rich, talented diaspora out there. We just need to find ways of how we help them to bring investment back. So that's one example. The second example I want to share is more around, I call it, as I said, discoverability. So I studied in the US. I did my PhD there, moved back when IBM Research was starting the lab. And just this year, last year, I traveled back to the US and visited my PhD supervisor, Dr. Lau. He's been doing drug discovery work, fantastic researcher. And as we're having discussions, the question he had is, I have some really good work I've been doing. How can I collaborate with someone in the continent to do a particular portion of it? I have a very good relationship with him. Based on my understanding of some of the researchers in Kenya at that point, I was able to actually connect them. He visited. Now they have like 3 projects that they're planning to do. So I think the other element is really, that's just a serendipitous one if you ask me, but for us to start to think about how can we be strategic about how we help our researchers here to be discovered, but also how we bring an element of those who are interested in collaborating. How do we make that process simpler, easier for people to find each other, easier for them to collaborate? I'm going to finish with just understanding that a whole lot of how we have to help the diaspora as well, many of them perhaps have been away for a long time, is also arming them with the right language to talk about our interests, our strategic goals, and what we need for them to help us. So that's also something that we could really participate in, helping them so that they can do a good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charity. Charity, thank you very much. Discoverability and advocacy. Now I call upon Professor Ibo Mandaza. Prof, you've got extensive experience in academia, civil service, and many leadership roles. How do you believe engaging African diaspora can contribute to addressing perhaps be specific on governance, economic development, and political challenges on the continent? Thanks, Ibo.
Thank you. In subscribing to the now proverbial all protocols observed, I want all the same to acknowledge my brother, my younger brother, the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation. And in doing so, just to make a correction, we all congratulated him for what was described as an honorary professorship. Now, coming from academia as I do, there is no such thing. Professor Blade Nzimande is a professor. There's no honorary professor. When you are awarded professorship, is for very concrete three things. One, solid academia. I know his career is a solid academic. Teaching and research, he told you we work together. And thirdly, social responsibility. So those who awarded the so-called professorship took into account those. So he is Professor Blade Nzimande. Thank you, Professor. The second point I want to thank the organizers, in particular the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Innovation. And in saying so, because I've been here second time now, I was in Cape Town last year, I don't know of any Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Innovation which has been so innovative. When I walked into this hall, into this establishment, I was pleasantly shocked. And seeing all of you scientists gathered here is certainly a testimony that things are working as should. So I want to thank you for the showcase that you have put up here. And this is important because what I'll say later may not be as pleasant as that which I'm saying now. But before I turn to the main subject of my presentation, there were 2 minutes short there, so I can take those 2 minutes. I want to say the following, that I've heard the first presenter talk about the 9th Pan-African Congress. Now, I'm glad that this has happened here in South Africa because there is a bit of rivalry in the Pan-African movement. What we have coming up is the 8th Pan-African Congress. The last was the 7th in Kampala in 1994, and the 6th was in Dar es Salaam in 1974, for the record. So gladly, I'm a member of the organizing committee for the 8th Pan-African Congress. And we're meeting in Kampala next week, on the 16th, to reconcile the Kampala initiative with the Togo initiative, which Togo initiative seems to have lost the sequence. If also because Togo is not particularly Pan-African, as you know. So, not surprising. Yeah. Now, quickly, my main thing. First, as to quote the minister, the bad things. I'm going to turn your topic upside down, if you don't mind. I think we need to define the diaspora. And secondly, we need to describe the conditions which have caused the diaspora. Okay? I don't want to go into details. I'm from Zimbabwe, and the Zimbabwe story speaks for itself. But quickly, I was responsible for education and manpower, it was called, during the struggle in Mozambique. And my job was precisely to prepare for independence, identify in the camps people with some basic education to go for training in preparation for independence. And one of the reasons which moved us was the experience of Mozambique. Mozambique lost in 1 week 25,000 workers on the railways. And these are all white workers, because Africans were not allowed into skilled positions in that country. 25,000 1 week, and so the railways came to a standstill. So one of the things that inspired us in Zimbabwe at independence was the fear that whites would live in the great numbers. So we trained like hell. Now, within 2 years, we're virtually self-sufficient in skills, the most skills. But you know what has happened now? Quickly, fast forward. We now have 75% of all skilled and professional Zimbabweans outside the country. 75%. Over the last year, 20,000 nurses and care workers have left for the UK alone, recruited by the UK. A whole section of NRZ, National Railways of Zimbabwe, engineering section that we trained in the 80s, left. They're now running British Rail in the UK. Can go on. Now, the positives out of that. Of course, one is what we mentioned, remittances. The remittances from Zimbabwe, the diaspora, amount to almost 3 billion a year, which is almost equivalent to the national budget. And one of the reasons why people talk about Zimbabweans being so docile, except living up to this oppression and repression, is because some of the social and economic ills are being addressed by the diaspora. Feeding their parents, helping with schools, building, and so on and so forth. Also, in 2013, we formed the Zimbabwe Diaspora Home Interface. And under that program, a number of Zimbabweans, doctors, for example, were able to form a consortium in the diaspora and contributed. For example, clinics were built across the country, something like 200 clinics, maternity clinics in particular. And so we've been having the situation where we're trying to make the best out of a very bad situation. Thirdly, many of our diasporans, Zimbabwean diaspora, are here in South Africa. I met many of them here, our former Zimbabweans are everywhere, even on the moon. And I think one of the derivatives of that is not that we should lament. I think we should try and put a positive spin to it in terms of regional integration, Pan-African unity. And we'd like to see one day the ministries of higher education in the region meeting to see how we can rationalize those skills, share skills around, because most of the skills here in this country, Zimbabwean skills, are precisely in the specialized areas: science, mathematics, health, education. You know that. So we'll see how we can rationalize that in terms of breaking down the barriers and building the bridges. East Africa. 8 countries in East Africa now have dropped passports. Use ID. No work permits anymore. Between Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, I think Somalia has joined. Why can't we do the same here? We have proved there is no reason for controlling migration of skills in our region. None at all. And East Africa has proved that. So one way is to build regional integration through breaking down of barriers. I was telling students at another lecture that rivers and mountains were never boundaries between our people, neither in Africa nor anywhere else. Rivers facilitate integration. Limpopo is not a boundary between Zimbabwe and South Africa. It is not. Limpopo facilitated the existence of Mapungubwe and the Zimbabwe empires. We're actually one country. Some years ago, I was chairing a meeting here in Joburg, and President Cyril Ramaphosa, not president then, was on my panel, and I introduced him as, this man is from a small part of Zimbabwe on the South African side.
Thank you, Prof. Now we've got the last two colleagues, and they've promised me they will stick to their 5 minutes. And I've got Dr. Michael Makanga. Mike, as you walk, I want to pose a question to you as you come to the stage. You've got extensive experience in addressing infectious diseases and research management. Please share your insights in engaging the diaspora communities, in supporting research, healthcare, and policy in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Honorable Minister Zimande, ladies and gentlemen. First, I want to very briefly relate this to my personal experience and then to my institutional experience and how we build bridges. As an individual, I've been in the diaspora close to 30 years, and I would classify myself as part of, not brain drain, but part of brain circulation. I was born and bred in Uganda, where I had my initial education and had an opportunity with the Commonwealth scholarships to study in the United Kingdom for my master's, PhD, and later on had memberships. But most important, that gave me exposure in that when I left the UK, I was able to be part of the Liverpool-Oxford Tropical Collaboration, which created a bridge between what I learned as part of my training and relating it to the real-life environment back in Africa, where I spent quite some time working in Kenya, but I also had an opportunity of lecturing in one of my universities in Uganda. I spent 13 years here in South Africa, leading the as part of the EDCTP, that is the European and Developing Countries Clinical Trials Partnership, which has been running now for 20 years. This year we celebrate 20 years. And this is a partnership that when it started was created as a European economic interest grouping. And in this way, it was bringing together the investments of European countries in infectious diseases, clinical research, and building of capacity in sub-Saharan Africa, with focus on HIV, TB, and malaria at the time. When the second program was launched here in South Africa in November 2014, the structure had evolved into an association, bringing together European and African countries to work together as a partnership with co-funding from the European Union to take forward clinical development of medical interventions against HIV/AIDS, TB, and malaria, and now adding on other neglected infectious diseases, diarrheal diseases, and diseases of epidemic potential. Fast forward, we are the largest partnership, EU-Africa partnership, that is supporting clinical development of medical interventions in Africa. And I have to say, South Africa is one of the leading countries in the partnership and hosting our Africa office. Beyond investing in the research and development ecosystem, we've paid special attention to developing human capital, and in this, focusing on people and recognizing that science is fundamentally a human activity. And in this case, we have focused on developing human capacity with excellence, promoting excellence in science, but ensuring that the scientists that are developed are well connected locally, regionally, and globally. Coming up with a unique combination of scientists that I would consider to be lucky. Scientists that are prepared to grab the opportunity when it comes. And these are scientists that have a deep understanding of the local problems that are of policy relevance in Africa, scientists that understand health systems in the context of the system here in the countries, but scientists that are able to tap into the global scientific network and having access to the latest scientific thinking and technological advances. How does this relate to the diaspora? I'm part of the diaspora. You need to be around the table. You need to be credible. You need to display excellence. You need to know how the world works. How do you do that? It is by association with the best in the game. And this is the way that the people in diaspora are making a contribution in that, one, as an organization, we've been able to leverage some of them to come back and work in Africa by creating an environment that enables their research to happen. And for those that are not able to come, connecting them with the one back at home, the ones back at home, so that they're able to work as part of the consortia collaboration. Now, looking at the research ecosystem as a whole, now that we are looking at local manufacturing, research and development, the whole value chain, we need to connect the private sector and the public sector, and the diaspora out there will play a key role. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much, Mike. Lastly, I've got the CEO of the HSRC to come and share her insights. She did give me instructions to say I must just say CEO of HSRC. That's all.
Honorable Minister, special guests present here, our DG, my career will be very short if I don't do that. Maybe just following up on Professor Mandaza, let me also, my 5 minutes is about just challenging certain assumptions that we sometimes make. One is that the diaspora is a homogeneous group. 2, that the diaspora wants to contribute. 3, that diaspora is the diaspora that we wanted to contribute. The diaspora is very diverse in politics, in history. And therefore, as we want it to contribute to South Africa and the continent, we indeed must put question marks on who is the diaspora. My experience, particularly this year, has taught me that we need to redefine what the diaspora is, and I want to suggest that we need to talk about the new diaspora, because that diaspora should not be defined on the basis of locality, geography, race. However, there are political leniency towards what the Africa agenda is and should be. That's the basis in which we should be having a discussion with the diaspora. I know many people who define themselves as the diaspora, and yet they do not believe in the future of the continent. I've had our RAND DG being tanked recently, and we would have defined those individuals as the African diaspora. I want to make the argument that they are not. Instead, we need to look to our friends, and I'm glad that they're in the room, because in this year, we have found, again, we have affirmed that China is our new diaspora. We also need to ask ourselves, why do we need the new diaspora? And I think that we need it for 3 reasons, and one of them is multilateralism, which I won't get into detail, otherwise my chairperson here will stand up. The second one is a multipolar world where some want to always dominate at the expense of others, and they want their voices to always be heard at the expense of the continent and the global south. Thirdly, I think we do need to think about the new diaspora precisely because we need new voices, new knowledges. For history, as we all know, if we don't write it ourselves, tell the history ourselves, the hunter and the hunted, if the hunter tells that history, you know how the history is going to be written. With that, I want to suggest that as we think about partnerships, if we think about breaking borders, we must indeed ask who is defining the diaspora for what purpose? For I think that there needs to be a new political agenda of understanding the diaspora so that all of us can indeed see 2063 and realize the goals of 2030. I thank you.
Colleagues, thank you very much. We're running out of time, and as you heard, the DG is technically my new employer, and I don't want to make any career-limiting moves, so I'm not going to open, as I promised, the floor for a conversation, but I can promise you that the conversation continues throughout the Science Forum. And the colleagues here are here for an engagement. You've had very rich inputs. And it may be to help the DG, Don, and colleagues to summarize what I've heard. I may not say everything, but I think you already have your work cut out, Sarah, from defining the diaspora. I think this is an HSRC project, sorry to say. It's a big project. But what I've heard is using the diaspora, using their influence wherever they are, of course, positive influence. Trust and inspiration are important because you need to co-design solutions with the partners. And I think what is coming together is there needs to be a platform for awareness among the diaspora so that they know what each one is doing. I think an example that Heidi, you made, that you were not aware of who else is doing this. So a platform is important. And a high-level task of building bridges by breaking down the barriers. That's critical. Advocacy and association with excellence and with excellent initiatives. And I think this is where I'm going to end it, DG. And thank you very much. A big round of applause for our panelists. And thank you.
Thanks very much, Thandi, and thanks to all the panelists. I just want to divert a little bit from the script, and I see the minister is not here at the moment. My training is in natural science. The minister is a social scientist. The special advisors of the minister are also social scientists. So one of the things in the last couple of years that I've experienced working with them is that my training of being precise, especially with time, has gone out of the window. And I'm grateful to Thandi to try and have the social scientists here keeping to time, and I wish you all the best. But as you can then see, we are running slightly out of time. So may I ask for your indulgence that we push until about past? It's just a few more items, so we apologize we're late, but I'm sure you've enjoyed the engagements that we've had with the team. So just a few more minutes. I promise we'll be done. We're now going to the session where we would like, as part of our science diplomacy of the Decadal Plan, and what we have always done since inception of the Science Forum, to honor excellence in science diplomacy through our Science Forum South Africa, what we call Science Diplomacy Awards. It is a tradition we are proud to resume in 2023, as we heard that COVID didn't allow us to do this. So it is now my pleasure to invite to the stage Minister, I hope. Now. Also like to invite Mr. Dan Tutua, DDG International Cooperation and Resources of the Department of Science and Innovation, who will be leading us in these proceedings. What I can do before the Minister comes, I can give the background to the awards. You want to also talk about the process?
Exactly, and then when he's here, we start with the awards. Thank you very much, Director General. Good afternoon, Science Forum South Africa 2023 participants. As the DG indicated, indeed, the annual Science Diplomacy Awards is one of the traditions of the Science Forum South Africa. And as our Minister spoke about the importance of partnerships, at a Science Forum, we've always believed in the credo that science knows no borders. So we therefore seek to honor those who have contributed to foster new international partnerships in science, specifically those which advance the African agenda. Secondly, fostered international partnerships which responded to the key societal challenges we face. But then most importantly, and this was a consistent theme throughout the discussions this afternoon, partnerships which foster international solidarity and friendship. You would know that as part of the invitation to the Science Forum, you were all invited to nominate candidates for the awards in the different categories. Those nominations were duly received, and then they were considered by the Science Forum Steering Committee, which had a very difficult task because we had in excess of 70 individual nominations, and it will be my privilege this afternoon to announce the laureates of the Science Forum South Africa Science Diplomacy 2023 Awards, the awards which will be presented by our Minister, who is a committed champion for science diplomacy, and our Director General. Minister, if I could please invite you to the stage to join us.
So, where do I go to here?
Are you ready? It's fine, yeah. We are starting with 3 very special awards, awards which were not part of the formal schedule, and that is to honor individuals, much appreciated, much loved individuals in the South African science system who throughout their career have contributed to South African science diplomacy and who all in their own way ensure that South Africa today occupies a place of pride on the global science stage. But they are unfortunately no longer with us. It was a sort of great sadness for us all in the South African science system to lose them during the past calendar year, and we therefore thought it's only appropriate that we honor them on this occasion. Our first very special posthumous award will be going to Dr. Leanne McKinnell. Many of you will remember her. She was the chief scientist responsible for space weather at the South African National Space Agency, and it was because of Dr. McKinnell that South Africa today occupies an eminent place in the global space weather networks. If we speak about shared challenges and how we need to work across borders, certainly space weather is an excellent example, and perhaps a greatest legacy is that she has actively contributed to promote and foster the careers of an exciting next generation of young South African space weather scientists, the majority of which are black and female. So it's my privilege to invite Mr. Umalani Madong, the CEO of the South African National Space Agency, who will receive the award on behalf of Dr. McKinnell's family.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. This is indeed an honor, and I just thought that I should say a few words to say that she was a luminary who spans realms, whose leadership shaped future, whose dedication sets an extraordinary standard. As we reflect on her journey, let us remember her as a trailblazer, a mentor, and a symbol of what can be achieved through unwavering dedication, ceaseless learning, and the passion to make a difference. In celebrating Dr. Leanne McKinnell, we celebrate not just her achievements, but the ripple effect of her contribution that will continue to inspire generations to come. I thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Umalani. Our second award and the second beloved colleague would like to honor is Dr. Carolina Ottman-Govender. Her husband, Kevin, spoke to us earlier today, and he mentioned her. I guess all of us who know Carolina will remember the passion she invested in astronomy, but most importantly, her love for science and science to serve society and the public understanding of science and science across borders. She was also, I should say, one of the founders of Science Forum South Africa, and the success of today's event very much forms part of her legacy. So I would like to invite Kevin Govender to the stage, please.
So you asked me to say for you, this is the sort of stuff that would have left Carolina in tears. So on behalf of our family, of our kids, Xavier and Cyprian, thank you very much, Minister. I think I should say, I still wear her ring next to mine, and because her spirit and what she stood for is something that we want to carry with us wherever we go. And it's a spirit where she always spoke about being kind and about recognizing each other's humanity. Because even within the sciences, it's when we recognize each other's humanity that we can build stronger relationships, stronger partnerships, stronger collaborations. And I think, Minister, you quoted Nelson Mandela. I think it was a very appropriate quote because, it's not just about the life we live, but it's about the difference that we make in other people's lives. And Carolina made a huge difference, and her life was very significant in that sense. So I hope that with this award, with this recognition, you know, I've stood by her side when she was like singing praise for science in Africa in the highest levels of the European Parliament. And I've stood by her side when we were talking about the moon to kids, street kids in the beach in Mozambique. And I hope that through this award, her spirit, her humility, her kindness is something that can live within all the people that she's influenced throughout her life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kevin. The last commemoration award in this category will be emotional for all of us in the Department of Science and Innovation, because during this calendar year, we also lost a very dear colleague, Dr. Daniel Adams. Many of you in the room will know him. He was our Chief Director for the basic sciences and the research infrastructures. If South Africa today has a sophisticated policy strategy, for example, for investment in research infrastructures, it's part of the legacy of Dr. Adams. But he was also a science diplomat by excellence, facilitating South Africa's participation and collaboration with CERN, which, for those of you who followed politics during the Cold War of particle physics, CERN was in Western Europe, but Dr. Adams also ensured that we have a vibrant and active partnership with the Joint Institute for Nuclear Research, which was the counterpart established in Dubna in the Russian Federation. And he also was responsible for us playing a leadership role in the OECD's Global Science Forum, despite the fact that South Africa is not even a member of the OECD. So it's my privilege to invite Professor Bruce Malado from the University of Witwatersrand, who worked very closely with Dr. Adams in developing the South African CERN partnership, to receive this award.
As the DDG indicated, this is a very emotional time for us. And I will say a few words from the eulogy that we read out months ago. Dr. Daniel Adams was a titan of South African science. We owe to him the creation of such high-profile programs as South Africa CERN, South Africa GINR, for which he is getting today's recognition. Overall, it is very difficult to understand South Africa's participation in global research infrastructures without Danny's leadership and vision. Among many other contributions, Danny initiated the conversation about technology transfer. Danny's vision on how fundamental research can generate broad impact through technology transfer is the core of our vision for translational innovation today. He is and will be sorely missed for many years to come. Rest in peace, Danny.
We now come to the first of the 5 categories for the Science Forum Science Diplomacy Awards. It was an important theme of our minister's address, the importance of science for scientific advice for policy making and decision making. And of course, that's especially crucial for us at a global level to respond to shared global challenges such as pandemic disease and climate change. There's therefore a dedicated category to an individual which has championed scientific advice for decision making, not only nationally, but advice which has an impact across borders. And we are very privileged that we have today with us the leading global champion for international science advice for decision-making, Professor Rémi Quéron, who's the chief scientist of the government of Quebec, but also very critically, the president of the International Network for Government Scientific Advice, and also a very, very strong supporter of African science. Professor, for example, partnered with us during the COVID-19 pandemic for the government of Quebec to support a special Pan-African research program responding to COVID-19, and at the World Science Forum. It was because of his support that we were able to support science journalists from the developing world to attend the forum. Professor Guérin, it's my privilege to invite you to receive the award from our minister.
So thank you very much. It's really a privilege to be here with you, with Minister, Director Dan, colleague, member of the selection committee. Really an honor. I accept it on behalf of my colleague at the Fonds de Recherche du Québec and also at the International Network for Government Science Advice, INGSA. Say a few words about that in a minute, but I have a question first for you. Who has been to Montreal? Who has visited Montreal in the room here? A few of you. So that's one of the reasons we're very happy to be here. A few of us from Montreal arrived yesterday, 30 degrees Celsius here in Pretoria. I call home 30 centimeters of snow. The first snowstorm. So we're very lucky very happy to be here with you. More seriously, and Dan mentioned that already, the Quebec Research Fund, our partner with the National Research Foundation here, we had the opportunity to meet colleagues from NRF yesterday. We want to do more partnership, more exchange in terms of training. We can learn so much from each other. INGSA, the International Network for Government Science Advice, well, first activities here in South Africa. The head office of INGSA Africa is here in Pretoria at Future Africa. The head of the chapter, INGSA chapter in Africa, is based in Nigeria. Now we're developing a training hub center at the University of Rwanda in Kigali. Next year, May 1st and 2nd, the first meeting of INGSA in the Global South will be in Kigali. You're all welcome, and it's about inclusivity, being sure that there is more and more collaboration between cities, between countries of the Global South. So we'll try to help in that regard. And I like your tagline, making sure it's possible. My motto in French is impossible n'est pas français. So impossible is not a word in French. So you have to dream big. If you dream big, you work together, it will happen. Merci beaucoup.
Our next category is to honor international partnerships, which has had a transformative impact on the South African science system. Indeed, one of the objectives of our Decadal Plan is to ensure that our international partnerships achieve that transformative impact. South Africa is privileged to enjoy a diverse and a rich portfolio of international partnerships because that is what we believe in. Science knows no borders. But today we want to, after a very difficult debate, want to honor a specific partnership which over the past year has achieved that transformative aspects which the Minister spoke about in the Decadal Plan, in investment in people, in investment in partnerships, and partnerships which are focused on our strategic priorities. And it's therefore my privilege to invite to the floor Minister Councillor Shen Long, who's the head of the Science and Technology Office at the Chinese Embassy in Pretoria, for we would like to honor the transformative work being done over the past year, thanks to the leadership of Ambassador Chen and his team, through new initiatives such as the South Africa-China Young Scientist Exchange Program, the South Africa-China Joint Research Program, and indeed the South Africa-China Science Park collaboration. Minister Councillor Shen, thank you.
I'm very glad to receive this award. I have been here in South Africa almost 4 years, and I'm leading my team to promote the cooperation between China and South Africa in the field of science and technology. Although in past 4 years, 3 years we are covering with the pandemic. Although in the pandemic, the people-to-people exchange is very difficult, but we still organize a serious video conference to share the experience for fighting COVID-19, and we share a lot of experience with each other. And also, we promoted the substantial cooperative between China and South Africa, and we, the joint research program doesn't stop, still continuing every year. And also, we introduced the new partner for Innovation Hub and set up the cross-border innovation incubator center, and also we introduced a Beidou navigation system to South Africa compared with sensor in the navigation system. And also, after the pandemic over, this year, people-to-people exchange is come back to normal. So we introduced a lot of Chinese partners to South Africa. And not only for the government, but also for the universities and institutes. For example, we introduced China Academy of Science to South Africa, and also introduced China Association of Science and Technology to be a partner of SACNAS and also DSI, and sign some MOUs in some spatial content to cooperate each other, and also introduce custody to the science policy. And also very special or very important cooperation is space cooperation. This year, we introduced the Chinese National Space Administration to the censor to sign MOU in related to the International Lunar Research Station, and also for the manned spacecraft. In future, China and South Africa can cooperate each other in space science. And also, according to your new Decadal Plan, you will focus on 3 areas. One is modernizing agriculture, the second is modernizing mining, and the third is modernizing manufacturing. And there's 2 economics. One is circular economic, and the second is digital economic. And we are do our best find the Chinese partners for you and bring some Chinese companies to come here to cooperate with you in this area. And also, last month, your Honorable Minister Ngmani visited China and attended the Belt Road International Science and Conference. And at that conference, the Chinese government launched the International Science and Technology Initiative, and also launched the 4th Spatial Action Plan. One where in future, we are international cooperation for science and technology. We are focused on 4 areas. One is space information. The second is green and sustainable development. And the third is poverty alleviation. And the 4th is innovation and entrepreneurship. And last few years, we organized, with support from our embassy, we supported several training courses, including traditional medicine, space, and poverty alleviation, and climate change. So in future, we still will do a lot to promote the cooperation between two sides. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister Councillor, and I'm sure the Minister and our Director General will be delighted that you've taken the words to heart, because you also consider the Decadal Plan to be your plan. And I think that is one of the reasons the South African-Chinese collaboration is flourishing. Advancing the African science agenda has always been a key objective of the Science Forum South Africa, and we therefore have a category to honor international partnerships which has done that decisively. And this year, we want to specifically honor the Square Kilometre Array SKA Africa Partnership, which will be represented by Ms. Poncho Maruping, who's the director of the South African Radio Astronomy Observatory. During the forum, you'll hear a lot about the SKA in Africa, but what makes it different is that here is a project where we are not only talking about a telescope located in Africa. African engineers are designing this telescope. It will be African scientists which will be winning the future Nobel Prizes with these telescopes, and it's African governments which are co-funding and co-leading the policy development of the observatory. Poncho, please.
Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm really, truly honored to receive this award on behalf of CSIR. There are more than 400 men and women working at CSIR that made this possible. We started the year with a Royal Astronomical Award, and it is really fantastic to end the year with yet another award of the type of work that I sometimes feel goes invisible. But you know, we had our postgraduate research conference last week, and I met a young man from Ghana who came up to me and told me how the work that we've done, establishing Edition Ghana, and all of the training opportunities that we've created have truly shaped his future in a way that he could not have imagined. So hopefully this award is also for all of the partners that have been working with us on the HCD program that we've been running in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Poncho. We have 2 awards left, and the next is an individual award, and here we have asked for nominations for an individual scientist who throughout his or her career has sought to put science at the service of society. And today we are very privileged to honor someone who throughout her career has lived and acted all the aspects the Minister spoke about in his speech, specifically seeing science as that multidisciplinary enterprise which should impact society. And it's my privilege to invite Dr. Heide Hartmann to the stage. Heide has had many incarnations in the South African science system, being involved in the formative policy thinking in a young democratic South Africa. But today we specifically want to honor her role in bringing together the worlds of the social sciences and the natural sciences, because it was through Heide's leadership that the International Science Council was established. Heide?
Minister, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, I accept this award with a profound sense of gratitude and humility. Being recognized in this way is a tremendous honor for me, and more so because it comes from my home country, which I am so privileged and pleased to be working in and for again. You know, there is something about a Lifetime Achievement Award that makes you think, have I come to the end of something? And so I want to assure you that there are a number of good years left still. I want to express my very sincere appreciation to you, Minister Nzimande, to the Forum Steering Committee, and to the mentors and collaborators, many of whom come from Africa, many of whom are in the room today, without whose support and guidance, the work that I'm being honored for today would not have been possible. Thank you, colleagues.
Our last award is for an international science partnership which succeeded very deliberately, very impactfully to achieve excellence in global science, to expand the frontiers of human knowledge. And we are very privileged today that we can honor such a partnership, as you spoke earlier, which defies the traditional patterns of North-South collaboration, because this is a partnership of North-South which is truly co-owned, co-funded and co-led. And I would like to invite therefore Dr. Michael Makanya, who is the Director of the European Developing Countries Clinical Trials Partnership, EDCTP, in its various manifestations. Michael.
I'll be very brief.
Okay, you're going to speak.
Honorable Minister Blade Nzimande, dear colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be here today accepting the Science Diplomacy Award on behalf of the European and Developing Countries Clinical Trials Partnership as a whole, and the current program too that I'm continuing to lead, that is the Global Health EDCTP3. On behalf of my colleagues, former and current, and the entire EDCTP family, I thank the government of South Africa for recognizing our contributions to the fight against infectious diseases through excellent science. Our sincere gratitude goes to the Department of Science and Innovation of South Africa, which has been a key contributor to our partnership since the start. Your commitment and belief in our shared vision has co-enabled the current 1.6 billion euros partnership between the European Union and 43 governments, and these including 15 European and 28 sub-Saharan African countries. This award is dedicated to all our partners, especially the patients and health volunteers participating in our studies, with trust that through science we can indeed together reduce the socio-economic burden caused by poverty-related and neglected diseases in Africa and beyond. I thank you again for this award, which we accept with great pride and gratitude. Thank you very much, Minister.
Thanks very much, Dan, for handling this item on the agenda for the awards. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's only one final item for our program this afternoon. It's just a short reflection on how the Science Forum South Africa 2023 will be building on the legacy of South Africa's hosting of the World Science Forum last year in 2022. I'd now like to invite Ms. Mampe Chaba from the Department of Science and Innovation, who chaired the World Science Forum 2022 Local Organizing Committee, for a progress report on the legacy initiatives we are implementing. Mampe.
Thank you, Gigi. Good afternoon, Professor Minister Blade Nzimande, His Excellencies that are here with us this afternoon, our international partners, and of course the South African Science Forum delegates. I'll just give a brief progress report on the legacy initiatives from the WSF 2022. In December 2022, in partnership with the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, South Africa hosted the WSF, the World Science Forum, which was the first to be hosted on the African continent. The forum, under the theme Science for Social Justice, hosted over 2,500 participants from 89 countries. We had a total of 12 funding partners, 15 pre-forum events, 28 site events, 28 thematic sessions, 100 exhibitors, and we also adopted the Cape Town Declaration on Science for Social Justice. We have a number of legacy initiatives, but I'll just focus on 3 for now. The others are work in progress. Minister will give you a report on those soon. Firstly, the SADC UNESCO Science Journalism Program. In partnership with the NRF SASTA, SADC, UNESCO Regional Office of Southern Africa, Stellenbosch University, the Southern African Science Journalism Association, and the World Federation of Science Journalists, we hosted 40 participants from across the region in December last year over a science journalism program which was hosted by the University of Stellenbosch. In June 2023, we presented progress on the journalism program to the Ministers of Education, Training, Science, Technology, and Innovation in SADC. And they recognized the work we have done and made a number of recommendations, including that the journalism program be hosted on an annual basis to build capacity among science journalism in the region, and that we also improve the communication and reporting on science, technology, and innovation. We have committed Minister to holding this journalism training program on an annual basis on the margins of the Science Forum with the partners that I've just listed. The second one is the Youth in STEM Bootcamp. Through the Youth in STEM Bootcamp that was convened on the margins of the World Science Forum last year, we had 226 learners from 12 rural disadvantaged schools from around the Western Cape who participated in the bootcamp last year. To date, we have held 2 additional bootcamps. The first was in June 2023 in Limpopo. It was in partnership with the Department of Basic Education, UNESCO, UNECA, I apologize for the acronyms, the African Union, the UN Women Organization, Siemens, the International Telecommunications Union, who also supported 40 of the students by supplying them with laptops and continued mentorship. We also hosted this same bootcamp at the Eastern Cape in September of this year, where we had 50 learners from the Eastern Cape, Western Cape, Northern Cape, and the Free State. And they also received laptops from Siemens. We've also committed to hosting these annual workshops on an annual basis, both in South Africa, but also on the margins of the UNECA Africa Regional STI Forum, which is held February of each year. The last that I'd like to report on is, as a result, Minister, of your meeting on the margins of the World Science Forum with Dr. Gabriel Ramos, the Assistant Director General from UNESCO, responsible for social and human sciences. This meeting, Minister, that meeting provided an important impetus for launching the South African Transforming Mentalities program. This is a program or a community that allows safe space for young men and boys to address root causes of violence and mental health. Based on the proposal that was put together by the Human Sciences Research Council, the South African Transforming Mentalities Program was funded by the Department of Higher Education and Training, and then the inaugural Transforming Mentalities Summit was held in August of this year and attracted over 1,500 participants, mainly from post-school education and training sector in South Africa. To date, Minister, over 350,000 students across the universities in South Africa, TVET colleges, the CET colleges, have taken part in the gender-based violence module that is provided by Higher Health as part of a number of curricula that is being implemented as part of this program. So those are the three ministers that I'd like to report on, but to also thank the number of international partners that made sure that the World Science Forum was possible. I will not mention them by name, but they were part of our steering committee and they provided valuable guidance in making sure that the World Science Forum was the success that it was. I would also really like to thank the partners that we worked with from the African continent, which we continue to work with to contribute to Africa's development. I also would like to thank the intellectual contribution we received from the NSI, many of who are here today. Thank you very much for your contribution. We worked very well with a number of government departments who constituted the Interdepartmental Organizing Committee, and we also received immense contribution from the DSI programs within the DSI, particularly from our communications and finance division. I must also indicate, Minister, that we worked with a very dedicated, committed ICR staff. I don't know if you, Minister, you are aware of this, but we have a very capable, dedicated group of people that have made this work possible and continue to make our work easier on a day-to-day basis. Last but not least, we received immense support from the DSI executives, the DG, Dr. Mjwaha, Deputy Minister Buti Manamela, and of course, Professor Blade Nzimande. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Mampe. Ladies and gentlemen, the promotion of science journalism in Africa is one of our important World Science Forum 2022 legacy initiatives. In this regard, it is now my privilege to invite to the stage Ms. Milica Momcilovic, President of the World Federation of Science Journalists, for an exciting announcement.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues and friends, it's a great honor to be here today. As the report says, and I need to underline a couple of things here, that the World Federation of Science Journalists had a unique opportunity to be present at the World Science Forum in Cape Town last December that carried the theme of science for social justice. In these quite difficult economic times, academic courses on science journalists and mentoring programs run by media volunteers are becoming increasingly few and far between due to the support of the Department of Science and Technology and the Office of Chief Scientist of Quebec. I would like to thank Dan Dutoit and Professor Remy Curion here for the support. We had a group of science journalists from all over the world attending the Science Forum, World Science Forum, who reported from the forum. We learned there that South Africa has a robust science community focused on both research and the practical application of science. Almost every possible field of science is covered here, from astrophysics, paleoanthropology to agriculture. And for the science journalists, this is the place to be. And we were thinking about how wonderful and exciting stories are here to tell to our global audience. So there was no better reason to continue our collaboration and to try to organize, to put everything together for the next World Conference, the 13th World Conference of Science Journalists, to be held in Pretoria in December 2025. And I'm very happy to say that we can announce that this is going to happen. It's going to be hosted with our local association, the South African Association of Science Journalists, in collaboration with Science Diplomacy Capital of Africa. This is really like something that in the Federation, we would just dream about. But there is no country in the world, I can tell you at this very moment, that gives this much attention to science journalism as South Africa is. On the legacy of the World Science Forum from last December, we are going to organize our conference under the theme of Science Journalism for Social Justice. And as a symbol, we are selecting the blue crane to represent this historic moment, that this is the first time that the World Federation of Science Journalists is going to have a conference on African soil. I would like to thank Minister Zimande for that, for the support, and would like to ask him to be a patron of our event in 2025. Thank you all.
Thanks very much for this announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, good news is that we've come to an end. We are about 25 minutes late. Now, let me explain to you what that means. I am right in the middle of being evaluated as a DG. And the person who has to evaluate me is on my left. So the fact that I have not been able to deliver this thing by 5 o'clock, you already know what it means for my evaluation. So as we go to the cocktails and as we enjoy the exhibition, I'll be going around with a begging bowl to make sure that what I will not get from on my left-hand side, I get from you. But thank you very much. What I'd like to suggest is that we thank everybody who have made this possible. But this is the start of this forum. We'll also have a chance to thank everyone. But I do like, Minister, to thank you because I do know that you had another engagement in Parliament and you were able to decide to be with us, so it's not taken for granted. Our international guests, we really are forever grateful for your support and partnership. The DSI team led by Danny, he says, I'm the DG. The DGs just sign things. The people who do the work is the rest of the DSI staff, which I'm extremely proud of, and yourselves for staying the course and for being a wonderful audience. Thank you very much. So may we just remain standing and allow the minister and the team to go and open the exhibition, and you're then free to join us during the cocktails and the networking event. There will be some small activities there, but let's allow the minister, please, to go. And this is the last time you hear from me, I promise. Thank you very much.